another tip I'd like to talk about would be proper use of Trizact 3000 and 5000 abrasives. So really the most important thing in this system would be to use the abrasives long enough. So we're using the 3000 and 5000 grit to really remove the 1500 grit scratches that were put in the defect removal process. If we shortchange the 3000 step, we're still going to have 1500 grit scratches, and that'll come back and make our life more difficult in the long run. So really the length of time is critical to the success. So we need to make sure we use the disc long enough and use a disc that has enough life in it to make the process work. For example, if a technician uses a disc for an entire car, maybe on the last 2 or 3 panels, that disc isn't cutting very effectively, it might not remove that 1500 grit scratch. Again, if we have a 1500 grit scratch, the Perfect-It 1 paint finishing system will have a difficult time removing that. Okay? So as with all sanding, we need to make sure we use the proper air pressure on the tool. We like to use 40 to 50 psi at the tool so we have the right pressure and the tool doesn't free spin while we're working. Most shops don't have a regulator at the wall where we can turn it down, so we need to use a regulator on the tool. We'll adjust it to 40 to 50 psi, and that's typically done by sound. So we don't want the tool screaming, we don't want it to free spin when we put it on the surface. We want to have a nice, easy flow, not pushing down hard, 2 to 3 pounds, so the tool is oscillating, not free spinning. The next most important thing would be to use the interface pad. This interface pad gives you a more uniform finish, slightly finer, and it's going to make the tool run much smoother. Smoother tool, finer finish is going to make your next step that much easier. Another tip and trick would be to use the correct amount of water. If we use a lot of water, the disc is going to hydroplane across the surface. So we want to use maybe 2 or 3 squirts of water on the disc and 2 or 3 squirts of water on the painted surface before we start buffing. If it starts to dry out, simply add a little more water. Again, too much water makes the disc hydroplane and it reduces the cut significantly. Another tip would be to use a 50% overlap. So if you can, I like to go 50% overlap north, south, east, west. So I'm really cross sanding. Of course, if you're working on a fender or a small area, you might not be able to cross sand, so just do a 50% overlap. And what that'll do is prevent some tiger striping. We'll make sure that we don't have any spots where we didn't fully refine the scratch. Because if we have a 1500 grit scratch, it's going to be much more difficult to remove in the long run. Another tip would be when you're done sanding with your Trizact, especially the 3000 before you move to 5000, is to clean the painted surface. So we want to take a rag, we want to wipe off any of the extra sanding dust or the white slurry that's on the panel. When we wipe the panel, it'll remove any contamination that might be left over. That's going to give us the best, most uniform finish. So again, we don't put any deeper scratches. One final tip would be not to change the disc over the work surface. So even changing from 3000 to 5000, if we change the disc right over the work surface, some dust or debris could fall down on it, and if we don't clean it properly, we'll put in some deeper scratches. And again, with deeper scratches, we'll have a harder time pulling them out at the end.